Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Public Works and Safety Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I would like to move item number 7 to the top, if everyone's okay with that. Any other changes? Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Bueller, second by Y. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, the first item on the agenda is consideration of memorandum of understanding for financing construction of improvements to 26th Street East in the US 212 right-of-way. And I didn't say this in the finance meeting, but I probably for the benefit of the public, what this is, we had a tabled item on the agenda from the previous council meeting to move forward with designation of who pays for what. And there was not any feeling on the council that anybody was ready to approve anything yet. And we entered into a mediation with the developers, or two developers, and the city met with a mediation team and an attorney. The city had Attorney Vince Foley representing us, and Coho had an attorney, and Glacial Lakes Capital had an attorney, and we all met and give and take across the afternoon and came out with consensus on how to move forward. And Vince has put this into writing, and I'll let you take it from there, Vince.
And the memorandum of understanding is a draft. It is not something that is that we're acting or asking for action on at this time because of differences in how we're going to handle the procedure, the payment, the responsibilities, and the construction, given some current information from legislative audit. But the principles that we talked about as far as sharing are what we're asking for approval from the Finance Committee today. It's important to keep in mind the distinction between the project within the highway right-of-way and that which lies north of the highway right-of-way. We are only talking about city responsibility for funds expended for part of the project within the 212 highway right-of-way, that being an approach. Currently, there is a culvert of a certain length based upon requirements from the Department of Transportation. It needs to be expanded to provide for a wider road surface to allow for truck traffic turning. Because of that, you'll have to extend the culvert. You'll have to add fill. You'll have more asphalt and more curb and gutter and ancillary construction costs as well. Those costs are what is being talked about in the highway right-of-way project. Within the highway right-of-way project, the mediation terms that the city agreed to would be the first $100,000. Well, let me rephrase. 100% of the construction costs not to exceed $100,000. Beyond $100,000, the developers will be sharing at a rate that Glacial Lakes does not exceed $5,000, and Coho would be responsible for their respective share of the balance. The share for Glacial Lakes is 25% of the construction costs above 100, so long as their share does not exceed $5,000. So that other 75% would be Coho's, and then above that, Coho's would be Coho's responsibility would be the full amount. The idea being that because of the impact on the right-of-way and that approach and the importance that the approach has to that traffic, the agreement was reached to have that respective share amongst the parties. We do have 3 members of the negotiating team, Mr. Bueller, Mr. Danforth, and Mr. Lallam on Public Works Committee. Mr. Roby was the other council member, and then the mayor was present as well. So that means, Mr. Y, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Vince, I do have one question. It's regarding point 9.
Okay. Keep in mind, what we're not talking about this as an agreement to be considered. It was initially put in, but the agreement itself as a document is not part of it. So I can address paragraph 9, but it is not yet approved amongst the parties. So if we talk about verbiage, I mean.
No, my question is I know we're talking about the original intent on this was the right-of-way, and we have communicated that in both the finance and here, but technically number 9 falls outside of the right-of-way, just for the public's understanding.
Okay, yep. And
Do we know what that number is that the city will be absorbing? Does anybody know what that number is? I think we should.
I think Kristen had calculated out what had been spent already. Some of the, Shane, you might know, the cost directly and indirectly related to infrastructure presently constructed or placed in 26th Street. There's basically nothing other than maybe some base course and a sewer and water service.
Correct. So when 8th Street was constructed, the access for the sanitary sewer was in the Highway 212 right-of-way. So they extended northward out of a manhole in the right-of-way via 26th Street to 8th Avenue. So there was that sanitary sewer main was installed, and also water mains were constructed within the right-of-way there as well. And what I believe this is referring to is those 2 infrastructure components, as well as the water and sewer service, which was stubbed off of those mains to the property owned by GLC.
Question is if there's a rough idea what that cost is, so we can share that with the public. It seemed like I'd heard once like $5,000 or something. That seems reasonable.
I can't remember what the exact number is, but it's not
It's not an overly big number.
No,
but
correct.
Again, it's as we've communicated, this being in the 212 right of way. Number 9 is not in the 212 right of way. That's why I'm bringing that up.
correct.
Okay.
And Coho, or the Coho, by fulfilling their agreement on 8th Avenue, would be essentially paying for those improvements.
I'm not sure what the full intent of this, if Glacial Lakes Capital was concerned about being charged their pro rata share for the sewer main, which gives them the ability to have a building on their property, and they're saying we don't have to pay anything for that sewer main or for the sewer service that's already, is that accurate, Vince?
Generally, yes. Okay, I want to make a point, though. We keep flipping on the memorandum of understanding document up there. That is not the current version. The version that I handed out right before, and I did give to the press. I'm sorry, this press. I've got one for you too, Dave. Is the current version, and so there's language in the more current version that's not included in that paragraph, and it speaks to any cost. I'm sorry, if you go to the second GLC, and it says for any costs, it should say any costs directly or indirectly relating to.
Zoom in, they can see your handwriting.
There we go. Okay. This any cost directly or indirectly relating to infrastructure is added in as well. I think since we're
Okay, and there might have been a sewer cost recovery for a sewer main in the US 212 right-of-way that Endries would have been responsible for, which was built many years ago, and then this sewer, which was built recently. And so that wasn't, we didn't really talk about the mains in the mediation. We talked about the services.
And that's where we're talking about the land or the infrastructure presently constructed or placed in 26 abutting GLC property or the
Okay,
disputed 33
yeah,
feet.
all right, okay. It's just the 26th Street.
Yes.
Yeah, my point here on this is to make sure that the public knows that this is outside of what the 212 right-of-way was.
Yeah.
That's the primary point. And if we know what those costs are, great. If we don't, we know it's not a significant dollar amount, because we had talked about this at some time in a previous session that we had here, so.
I think the indirectly maybe refers to the fact that there was engineering cost that the city paid, and we won't be trying to recoup that. That was discussed in the mediation. Any other comments or questions? So we're looking for a recommendation to move forward with the terms.
Not the agreement, but the financial terms.
I would make the motion to move forward with those terms.
Motion by Lallam, second by Danforth. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discussion of potential assessments and sidewalk accessibility for the 3rd Avenue reconstruction project. And I'll let Shane explain this.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, so several of my issues are all related to potential assessment projects, and I just want to kind of lay the groundwork here on the first one. So we're going to talk about scope of the project, making sure that we fit the budget, and also the desire to pursue assessments on most all of these projects. And in 3rd Avenue South, in particular, it's in the southwest part of town from 13th Street on the east, going approximately 5 blocks in numeration anyway, to 18th Street west. Currently, there is curb and gutter along the entire south edge of the street as it's been constructed, and there are several gaps in the curb infrastructure on the north, and you can see that highlighted by a highlighted line, and then a distance of, for instance, on this lot was 69.7 feet of curb missing, and you can go on down the line, and you can see that this segment here on the western edge is quite long. It's almost 400 feet, a block length without curb. Again, to the east, there's a couple of long stretches that don't have curb. So what we're looking at is there a desire to have an assessment project running alongside this project? And the main scope of this project was to restore the surface. So we were going to plan on removing the asphalt surface, reworking the base, and paving a new surface down. That's the primary objective of this project. So along with that, then we wanted to approach the missing curb segments and see if there's a desire. We're going to reach out to the property owners, let them know what our anticipated costs are, and include an assessment project if this board wishes to pursue that. Another issue that we took a great big look at was there is no sidewalk along this project anywhere. We did a lot of research. I had the assistant city engineer, Colin Paulson, do extensive research on case law with regard to how much effort a community needs to go to make sure that there is handicap accessibility. The biggest constraint on this project is that we don't have adequate right-of-way on either side of the street to build the sidewalk infrastructure. We do have means and methods in order to do that, but our standard practice here is that if we do construct a new sidewalk, that we would anticipate being able to assess that sidewalk work as well. Well, in this case, we would have to acquire right-of-way, construct an improvement, and expect the landowners to pay for it all. And the odds of us accomplishing that much work to get a sidewalk on this quiet residential street would probably be insurmountable. So we're going to recommend pursuing a project without a sidewalk in it because of the lack of right-of-way. And our research shows that that is one of the obstacles that can prohibit the construction of a sidewalk project. Again, just to kind of paraphrase, we normally send out a petition letter for assessment projects. I want to skip ahead one step and have the city act as if it's proposing this assessment for the curb, and then we would set up a hearing, send out the information to all the adjacent property owners, let them call us, we'll explain to them what our goals are, and then have that hearing. And if they opt out, we would just let them opt out of putting the curb and gutter in. I'm not aware of any substantial drainage issues that have been received by our office. So if there's flooding out there, people might applaud the curb and others might, sneeze at it and not want it. So I would propose that we would do that on a lot-by-lot basis if the council desires. But right now I'm looking for feedback on what the Public Works Committee's thoughts are on pursuing the curb and gutter or not on this project.
Anybody have any questions?
I do. Shane, what did you say the total footage of curb and gutter that's missing is?
I didn't, but
Oh, I thought you did earlier.
no, there's approximately 2/3 of the north side does not have curb and gutter.
Has that curb and gutter ever existed, or is it?
No.
So it's not like it's just been gone over the years. It's just it's never been there.
Correct. And I have researched if any of the property owners have had building permits where we collected a waiver of right to protest, and there are none on this project.
Okay. My last question then is would these individual sites, lots, would they qualify for, we have that sidewalk program where we pay part of it that we have if they want to put it in a repair?
Well, typically we only do that on a repair or replacement schedule. This would be brand new curb that they theoretically have never paid for.
We've allowed infill where there isn't a commitment. If you looked up all the building permits, maybe you didn't do that, I don't know. If there was a requirement on the building permit to do it and they didn't do it, they're not eligible. But if this was allowed to go in without sidewalk for whatever reason, and they're filling in gaps, then we have allowed that.
Okay, and if that's allowable, we can consider that as well.
Well, I think what we should do, because that would certainly have a bearing on this, if
And the
this was
council can
eligible
do
for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question.
So-
So what you're suggesting, Shane, is that the property owner, we bid it out, and the property owners could say yes or no to curb and gutter. But the sidewalk part of it, you're asking the Public Works Committee to tell you to proceed without sidewalk or to proceed with sidewalk?
If we proceed with sidewalk, we're going to have to probably table this project for the year because we wouldn't have enough
There's not
budget.
right away.
Not enough right away, and it would be an arduous process to acquire right away and to do the assessments. We would then have to do a substantial assessment project
And
for
the acquisition of the right-of-way would then bring compliant buildings into a state of
Non-compliance.
non-compliance.
Correct.
We got a question.
Councilman.
Couldn't we, would they have to be tied together? I mean, couldn't you do the road and do the curb and gutter for, gotta come back to that one too, by the way. And then if at some point we do the sidewalk later, come back and do the acquisition and do the sidewalks later? I don't know why they'd have to be tied together.
No, but there's a cost savings if there's concrete work being done on the road to do sidewalks, they'll get a better price.
Right. They don't have to be done together, but usually when you're working in a project area, you're going to get better prices for that. Now, that is a good point the mayor brought up, because part of our research did show that if we acquire right away on the north side in particular, that several of the buildings are going to be non-compliant with their setback. So that's another hurdle to, if we pursue sidewalk, that we will make non-conforming structures.
If we do the selective curb and gutter and Lot A wants to do it, Lot B doesn't, Lot C wants to do it, are we going to do it on a lot by lot basis, or are we going to look at it and say it's just not worth it, or that it is worth it?
I would try to set up the project bids such that we can, on a lot-by-lot basis, eliminate the quantity. And just as for instance, the largest estimated cost here is $5,500 for the curb on the largest lot. And then it goes down to, I think $75 is about the smallest amount. But anyway, that's what I would propose, is that we allow each property owner to evaluate whether they want to be part of the project or not. Unless the council decides that they want it to be all in, then that's the direction I would go. But
Councilman Lalo?
I would look at this as either you're all in or you're all out. I mean, I don't want to have where you have curb for 100 feet and then you got 200 feet without curb and 50 feet of curb and then 75
Kind of
feet
what
of
we
no.
have now.
Yeah, I mean,
Out there.
it's either you all do it or none of them
no,
do it.
I agree that'd be the ultimate desirable goal, but there are other places in the community that don't have curb at all.
Yep.
And unless we're setting the stage to force curb on every
Well,
project that we come along on.
We
then
are already setting that stage anyway with any new construction that they have to have it, so
new construction, but
Right.
not reconstruction.
I understand that. But,
Different.
I mean, we already have a precedent to do it, so in my opinion, I would say let's see if we can get them to go along with it. If they all come out and say, I don't want it, then we can relook at that. But as it sits right now, I would say let's put it in so that all the roads, plus it's easier to move snow, it's easier to contain water, everything else.
You weren't talking about doing an assessment for the curb and gutter, or were you? A regular assess, because this is outside of the time limits for tax purposes, isn't it? If we did this for this
No,
2018 construction season, I think we missed the boat for getting it assessed. We could do it for the following year, but we normally have to get our assessments into the county.
No, that's to get it done at the finish line. I can't imagine that we have such a small window to initiate an assessment project.
Well, we usually are doing assessments. in the
usually we're
summer and
doing this
fall
in
before
November.
the construction season. So do we have time to get this? I mean, if we miss that boat, can we still get it for next year? Like, they just would be delayed a year? Is that, Kristen, do you know?
I'm not quite sure on that. I do know that you are correct. Usually isn't it September?
Okay, the assessments are due by the end of September to get them in time to the county to be on the tax roll. So as long as we've completed any project before September 15th, per se, we would know what these costs are and can get these assessments done.
But it's such a long process with the public hearings and sending that petition around, and
This project I wouldn't do with a petition. I would skip the petition and just initiate a project, have the hearing, and
Okay,
then.
so the hearing on the resolution of necessity?
Right, correct. And then,
And that's when we would make the decision
right,
as to whether or not there's curb and gutter. We are not assessing for any asphalt because they already have asphalt.
that's correct.
We'd only be assessing for those who do not have curb and gutter, new curb and gutter, where none existed prior.
That's correct.
Is it a 10-year assessment?
They have options. They can pay it all up front, or they can pay it off, and what are the choices?
It's 10 years and then it goes on to the property taxes.
And a
They have it,
10%
yep.
interest.
Yep, 10% interest.
I think they can pay it off sooner.
Yep, yep. And I think, as Shane was saying too, as you mentioned, I think April is normally when we establish the, as you said, like the necessity, the
Yeah.
need for it,
Mhm.
and then it comes back once the final costs are to actually do the assessment. But I think April's the normal time when they come forward with the projects that they want to assess.
I think
So-
what you're referring to is typically our office tries to send out, if we've gotten,
We're doing petitions, but we're skipping that, so.
Right.
Yeah, we're probably just fine then.
right, and actually the upcoming projects that I'll discuss, we will be sending out petitions for those, and as long as we get them back in time to have a hearing by April, we should be able to still
Okay.
move forward with any project. Okay, so that's all the information I have on this. If there's some direction to do, I'm hearing to do all of the curb as one assessment, take it or leave it, by Councilman Lallam. Any other thoughts or direction that we want to discuss before we get there?
Sure. Councilman Billhauer?
Just a couple questions. Do you have a recommendation, because you have a couple different estimates here as far as depth of asphalt and the base. Do you have a recommendation as far as what is preferable?
Right, and I'll be honest, both of these were just sections that we've talked about. They're not by any means the final solution for this project. We don't know of any substantial base corrective action that needs to be done here, so we're primarily looking at probably removing the asphalt surface, reshaping and packing the existing base underneath it, and then just repaving it, similar to what we did in Summerwood last year.
So when it's bid out, then they'll have a couple different options then?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Or
then,
we'll have fine-tune it to one option. But
and then a question back on the sidewalk. That's close to McKinley School. Do we have any sense, I mean, are there a lot of kids walking along those streets? Do we have any sense of that? Or is that something we may want to take a look at or consider?
we did talk about that, and I have no sense of how many students live in this area. Certainly they're not using a sidewalk today if they're walking to school, and we can, again, go forward with that, but I think that with the need to acquire right away and assess it to the adjacent property owners, that you're going to find a great amount of resistance to that project.
Yes, Councilman Roby?
To Glenn's point, I do think there are some apartment complexes over there, so I was wondering the same thing.
Yep, there are.
Yeah, my question is this: the current lots that have curb and gutter, is that half of them, 75%? Let's just say it's half of them.
Yeah.
Those that already have curb and gutter, were they assessed to put that in the past?
I can't answer that question. This project's so old. I mean, that it was done before we kept those kind of records, if I remember correctly. The original cross section on this was 6 inches of gravel with 2 inches of asphalt over it. So any improvement we do is much needed. And I'm just guessing that, given the way the curb was installed, that was probably done as property owners did building projects, and they maybe opted in for curb and not curb, because it's very unusual to have this kind of gap system. Otherwise, it would be all in if we
Right.
did it in a city project. So I got to imagine it was all done privately with them paying the full bill.
I think that's an important data point. And the other thing is, we've had a lot of these half alleyway roads and such come up to the council in the past. And the idea is we're trying to get rid of those alleyways and pave these. So I'm just curious I'm interested to see how we'll handle this
Right.
one, because I think we've got a consistency issue we really need to consider.
Right. I'll go back to this. We had this conversation at the early part of this. Is I would support if we want to do a council or a subsidy from the city at the council's discretion. $5-10 a foot to just kind of encourage these folks to finish the street system. Obviously, from a pavement management standpoint, I would love it if the curb existed along the whole perimeter here. It assists us in managing the drainage. It provides a solid surface for the edge of the road, because right now, wherever there's not curb and gutter, if that's not supported by the paving system underneath it, gravel, whatever, then that edge of the road continues to break off and becomes a problem that's harder to manage as well. So,
And when you do, sections of curb and gutter, you pass the water to the neighbor.
correct.
Is the north side higher or the same or lower than the flow line on the right side or on the south side?
I would say typically it might be a little bit higher, but not much. There's still a crown in the road that holds the water all on one side.
No, I know, but the two flow lines, as our typical road would have equal elevation in the flow line with a crown in the center of the road. And you're showing a road with a crown in the center. Do you know what the actual cross section is?
We have the data, but we haven't gotten to that level of the
Okay.
design yet.
And also, is the existing curb just a straight curb, or is it curb and gutter?
It's curb and gutter.
Okay, so it's newer.
Yep.
And it looks like where those apartment complexes are, that was probably a project that was done, and then some of those folks on the north side picked up on the fact the contractor was there, and they probably had an option.
Right. In fact, the storm sewer along here was added after the fact. So there have been inlets added to this project, post-development.
Okay, and what you're looking for from the council is direction on whether to design this with curb and gutter, filling in the gaps, or just forget about that?
Correct.
Any more questions?
Is this something that would have to be decided upon and get a recommendation tonight, or could we do this 2 weeks from now? Because the reason why I say it's hard for me to say whether I think we should subsidize or pay for or not the curb and gutter when I really don't know what my quantitative numbers are.
Right. And I will say, no, it's not imperative for tonight, but it's imperative soon, because if we need to have the public hearings and all the deadlines that we would have to meet after this, I wouldn't want to slip too far down the
Well, could
decision-making.
you have a number for us that says we've got 285 feet of curb and gutter that would have to go in, or what that number is, so that?
Sure.
Because I really don't have any idea what that number is. The second one is, if we do go for the sidewalks, would we acquire enough right away that it would be boulevard and then sidewalk, or would we go sidewalk right on the edge?
I'd probably propose a curb sidewalk in this case, because it's already going to make structures non-compliant, and if we went the extra width, we would be right on top of the doorsteps in a few cases.
The right-of-way is, what, 40 feet
Yeah,
here?
29 to 40, isn't it, or something like that, or 40?
it's 40 feet.
So from your guys' perspective, having come out in the engineering field and out of the engineering field, are we better off having the sidewalks for the good of the public use and deal with the non-conforming lots, creation of the non-conforming lot, in this case, the setback? or are we better off not having the sidewalks and having conforming lots?
The engineering department probably has not asked the people if they want sidewalks, but I know the city had a program, maybe that's what Ken's gonna talk about.
Well-
With the free sidewalks? Are you
Right,
gonna talk about that?
but my question is from our perspective, are we, forget the landowners at this point, but from our city's perspective, would we rather have, do we think it's better for the city to have the sidewalks in and deal with the setback issue and the creation of non-conforming lots? Or do we think we're better off having no sidewalks and having the setbacks be correct?
Well, I personally like sidewalks, and I like to have, because they're safe. However, having sidewalks means people have to shovel sidewalks, and a lot of people don't want them simply because then they have an added responsibility to clear the snow. And so I wouldn't want to shove that down someone's throat in a situation like this. Is not a new neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that has existed for many years. So it's different than a newly platted area. And that's a pretty touchy subject. I think the engineering department was kind of not wanting to touch that. And without the proper right-of-way, that's a big deal to add the sidewalks. So I'm not sure that we could even make a choice about sidewalks. If we wanted to add those in, we got to kind of start over. But building official Kim Buchholz is...
The only thing I would say is there a possibility of just doing it within an easement instead of having to acquire the property, and then you save all the expense? You take a 4-foot easement from the people. It wouldn't screw up their setbacks because the easement's still going to come from the back of the curb. They wouldn't become non-conforming, and you can just put it in an easement. Same difference. Save a lot of time, money, and
That's
effort.
true.
An easement would work for that purpose. And I'll not to continue to barter, but there's other challenges. There's on the south side, I'll flat out say that there's at least 2 mailbox systems to those apartment complexes that are in the wrong location. There's multiple utility boxes in the wrong location. So to even find the route for the sidewalk can be done, but it's going to add, a substantial bartering position to the city. And then on the north side, there's mailboxes all along the whole piece too, so we'd have to consider that. All of those are not unengineerable. What we are asking, though, is not only are you leading the horse to water, then trying to force them to drink it, but you're also asking them to buy the water. And to get all that done, to get the sidewalk in, I'm just saying, I'm saying the public will probably kill a project based on sidewalk.
The sidewalk, even if everybody wanted it, it isn't necessary that you do that with the curb or with the road project. Those can be 2 completely separate projects. And if we're not doing curb, there's really no incentive to do the sidewalk at this point in time. And the fact that the sidewalk is intermittent, it isn't that much of a cost savings to do them together. So there's already some there. So there isn't a lot of concrete work on this project. I don't know if you want to complicate it with the sidewalk. I guess that's up to you if you feel strongly that it should be included, that they can move forward with that. But
I personally, based on what I'm hearing here, I think I'd leave it out. If we know if we're aware or not aware that there is a real public issue up there in regards to safety, certainly I think somebody mentioned the school being probably our biggest concern. If we really aren't aware of that and we aren't getting the neighborhood truly seeking it, then I think I would remove that part and not confuse it.
Shane, you got sidewalk on one side, correct? We can put sidewalk on without any assessment.
Okay, there's sidewalk on a portion of the south side.
Okay.
It ends by the apartment complex here someplace. I think it ends about right in here.
This has been this way, and I'm not saying that that's the right thing, but this has been this way for a long, long time, forever, okay? I think that especially without knowing what kind of foot traffic issues we've got, what the potential is for foot traffic there. I think that's a lot of hassle. And then when you make those all non-conforming, unless you're to do what Kenny said, and just make it a part of the right of way. I just really have a problem with putting those sidewalks, making them put those sidewalks in. I don't agree with that concept at all. As far as curb and gutter goes, I agree with the fact that if we're going to do that, I think you need to do all of it. You can't. I don't see what gutter does you any good if you got segments. I really don't. It's going to undermine the base course. Where it comes out, it's not going to flow the water like it should, and that's one of the reasons for a gutter. I just don't see the necessity I don't think it would make sense for us to do it in small chunks. I think you'd have to do the whole thing.
Councilman Albertson?
I think that we've gone through that years ago also, that the community wasn't asking for that. And when they don't ask for that, I think you're just getting a lot more issue than what you really wanted out of it. And so I would say leave it alone personally.
Councilman Roby?
They're not going to want to pay for it. I think Shane's description was pretty accurate. I mean, that kind of sums it all up. I'm just going to make the counterpoint just for discussion. That is, I moved back to town in 2003, and up in my neighborhood, we don't have sidewalks, or we have segments of sidewalks, and we've got people walking 4 abreast in the street. I have seen wheelchairs in the street, in the gutter, and I've seen mothers with baby strollers and fathers with baby strollers in the streets. And it doesn't look very good. And quite frankly, it's unsafe, and it's just not very neighborhood pedestrian friendly. So the continuation of the sidewalk saga in Watertown continues, but I'm guessing that they're not going to want to pay for it.
I want to just confirm what I think I heard you say, Shane, about checking with the requirement. This is a street improvement. Are we legally able to do it without bringing it up to ADA compliance?
Colin, can you assist with that? He did the majority of the research, and we discussed this at length.
Colin Paulson, Assistant City Engineer. Yes, we can do it legally, and you just have to prove, for one, that's not in the scope of work originally, and second, you would really have to prove infeasibility pretty much, and with all the problems that could come up with this or are currently present, I think that's sufficient with the research that I've done.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to add, I mean, even if we did it in easements where we have sidewalks that cross driveways, you cannot park on a sidewalk. So it may make some driveways, I don't know if you looked at that, it may make some driveways useless for parking. They would only be access to the garage. And that's a definite issue for, I don't know if that's a situation here, but could potentially mess with it. So is anyone ready to make a motion to?
Colin, did you have something?
Oh.
One more thing, Mr. Danforth was asking about the total length and possible costs, and what we have shown is 923 lineal feet of curb that needs to be installed, and that would come to a cost of $27,717.
I have a question. If they have curb currently, does anyone have curb currently?
Yes.
Do they have to pay to replace their curb?
We wouldn't
No.
replace any of the existing curb. It would all stay.
No, you.
Well, we would
once
repair
we own the
bad
curb.
segments. But
Once someone installs it, it's ours to own and or take care of. So we wouldn't ever make someone pay for it again.
Okay.
Unless it was improperly installed and we didn't accept it.
So you're looking for a motion?
I am.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we seek the residents' approval for the addition of curb and gutter, and that be all-inclusive or not be done, and that you exclude any work on the sidewalks at this point.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Danforth, second by Lallam. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4 is discussion of potential assessment project for the 25th Street Southwest improvements. Shane?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Similar quest as far as I want to provide information and get approval to proceed forward. 25th Street West is south of Highway 212. It leads essentially down to the boundary of Lake Pelican. There's a row of lots on the south side. I guess for reference, there's a farm implement salvage yard to the west side, and co-op owns a gas facility on the east side. At the south end of that is a daycare kennel, I'll call it, for pet owners that want to take their pets someplace and have them kenneled while they're on vacation, etc. Currently, the road is built with a rural section. It's gravel surfaced. And the reason that I'm bringing this forward to you is I've had several complaints over the last 2 years that I've been in my office with regard primarily to dust and also to roughness and maintenance. And I can't speak for how often the street department grades that road, but I'm sure it's frequent given the condition and the traffic that it does carry. What you see here on the screen is the area in red. I would propose a thicker section of roadway based on the truck traffic that was go into the co-op and also into the implement dealer here on the west side. Then we would switch over to a more residential section, a little thinner pavement, and go along the properties that are primarily residences. The reason to do a rural section now is because of the density of the properties isn't such that there's large advantages in collecting the runoff. There's already a ditch section with culverts under all of the driveways along the east side of the property that conveys the water efficiently all the way to Lake Pelican. There's a similar ditch section on the west side of the roadway that also conveys it down to the south end and ultimately to Lake Pelican. So with that, I would like to request a motion for the staff to proceed and collect or submit a petition to the property owners and get signatures collected in order to see if this project wants to go forward or not. Then we'll go from there. I fully expect that this project may fail, and I'll just be honest. We're doing this based on the complaints that we received as an option for those folks to eliminate their issues with dust, to provide them a paved surface for them to access their homes, to eliminate the rough road. That's primarily why this project's coming forward. If they fail to petition this project to go forward, it'll just die with lack of receiving a petition.
Shane, would the red area also be a part of that petition?
It would have to be, yes.
Okay.
There are some waivers of right to protest this assessment project for a small.
Actually, about 6 of the properties have waivers, I believe.
Those are
all the residential
really
ones.
Big properties, and we don't have waivers from them.
Correct.
This is just for the 25th Street, not 21st Street?
Yeah, I skipped the 21st Street
No.
accidentally. We'll go back to it.
Okay. I was
Sorry.
thought maybe we were throwing those together.
No, this is just for the 21st Street or 25th Street, and this is rural section. What width were you assuming?
I chose 28 feet,
It's a minimum.
and
for
the
a
reason I
private
did
road.
that is it's a minimum width for a private road and also a minimum width that the fire department likes to see for access to residential properties. So
So we're looking for a motion to move forward with an assessment project.
I'll make the motion to move forward on that, subject to the homeowners agreeing or the landowners.
Okay, motion by Lallam. Second by Danforth. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to move back to item 3, which I inadvertently skipped. Discussion of potential assessment project for the 21st Street Southwest improvements. Shane.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a segment of road which our office receives numerous complaints about being gravel and unimproved. I will say that most of the complaints are not from the residents that adjoin this section of road. It's for those folks that are served by it from further south. So neither one of these landowners adjacent to this section of road have been a part of the complainants. And I will say that this project has been approached at least one time in the past and ultimately was left unimproved. Half of the project is changed ownership. The last time it was approached, the same person owned the property on both the east and the west side of the roadway. Now the property owner on the west is changed, and they have not been approached with an improvement to my knowledge at this time. They did have a building permit that was sought out in the last 2 years, and the Planning Commission directed that they sign a waiver of right to protest their assessment if and when a building permit and a waiver is collected on the east side. We have not met that goal currently, but based on the complaints, I would at least like to reach out to these two property owners and see if they're willing to sign a petition and proceed with the assessment.
So did the west side sign a waiver of right to protest?
I believe they did. Is Ken still here? I believe I looked it up, and that was the direction that was a condition on their building permit that they requested. It included that and the reestablishment of some green boulevard in the.
Okay. So and in this case, we're looking at a full standard with curb and gutter on both sides.
Right. We matched the street section at the south end of the project that we would tie into, and then brought that north up to the entrance to 212.
So we're looking for a motion to move forward with an assessment project?
We'll do the same thing. We'll circulate a petition and see if we get that back. Now, I want to make this clear to the council. We, as a city entity, can also push these assessment projects without a petition. And so at some point in time, we may have to, in situations like this, force an assessment project for the greater public good, because if these two property owners never move forward with anything, we're going to be left with a segment of road that will never be improved. And I just want to point that out, that the city always has the option to initiate an assessment project and make it happen.
Shane, can I ask you a question? What if one side says, yes, we want it, and the other side says no? I mean, is there one own 51%, the other one owns 49%?
That would become a council decision as to whether you pursue a project or not. That's why I made the statement I just did, because at some point we might not meet a threshold of a true majority, and we'll have to make a decision to proceed or not proceed. Sorry, Mayor, I interrupted.
I'm just trying to remember what the rules, the state law says about assessments, where if we have 51% and they refer it, the 49% refers it back. Is that possible?
I'd have to read that section of the law too, and I believe the threshold is 55%. But
or 55%. So if someone with the 45 refers it during the referendum period, 20 days after council action, that wouldn't count tonight. That would be after we'd pass a resolution of necessity, which would come
Down the road.
shortly. Again,
Yep.
it's the same kind of timeline.
Yep. But on this project, I do want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a collector road that's never been improved for one block, and at some point in the community's history, we'll have to push to get this
We
finished.
get
I would
lots
like
of
to do it
complaints.
voluntarily. I'd like to get it done voluntarily, and that's where I'm reaching out to them from that approach. So.
Mayor, I'd make the motion to move that forward, to send it out to the public for petition.
Motion by Lallam, second by Danforth. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item number 5 is discussion of potential assessment project for the Wheel-In Alley improvement. And this is kind of a technicality. The property owners petitioned for this improvement, and nobody came to the hearing because there was adequate signatures for moving forward, and the council felt uncomfortable passing it when no one came to the public hearing, so it didn't make it in time for its project in the 2017 construction season. So you haven't got any new information, do you, Shane? Is this existing information?
Right. So what I'll re-summarize that a little bit in more detail. So we, out of 6 properties last year, we received a signature from 2, which met a simple majority of over 50% of the property. What's changed slightly this year, those 2 petitioners was this property and this property. And now this property owner here, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so these two properties on the north side of this alley were the petitioner's signees last year. So that left us a segment from about right here to here and these 2 properties. Well, these 2 properties were owned by separate owners last year, and now the owner of this building here also owns this lot here. So we're going to resubmit the petition, and we're going to make sure that the petitioners understand that they need to reach out to everybody, because what I believe happened last year, once they had a simple majority, they just quit circulating the petition. Then, subsequently, nobody showed up at the hearing to support the petition, and it failed at the council level based on that. And I don't disagree with the failure, but I think had they shown up, this project would be done already. And so I want to re-bring it back to them, give them one more opportunity to bring it forward and get it improved if that's what they truly want. So again, this is just asking for me for permission to submit the petitioners a form to request if they want to do an improvement project.
I'd make a motion to recirculate the petition for the adjacent landowners on this alley project.
Motion by Bueller, second by Y. Any further discussion?
Has there been anyone that's against it?
I didn't hear any opposition either, that's what was so weird about that project last year, is that presumably you had consensus, but nobody shows up, and then it just dies because nobody shows a true interest, you know. So.
Yes, Councilman Roby.
In that scenario, let's say it comes back favorable. I think I know the answer, but tell me how that's going to get assessed.
We would assess that on a linear foot cost. We take the total cost of the project, divide it by the total number of feet improved on each side, and make that calculation per foot. So everybody pays for their equal share.
Which is the design of how it's supposed to work, correct?
Yep.
So back to my earlier point then, with consistency, why would we do anything differently in other projects? I don't even need an answer for that, but I think we just got to keep that in mind.
No, I'll explain why. In some cases, you have 10 little lots, and then you have one humongous lot. Well, the humongous lot probably has more benefit than the other small lots. I'll give you another example. As we do lot layouts around a cul-de-sac, a lot of those have huge lots but very small frontages. It's not fair to assess them on a front foot if they had a quarter of an acre but only had 100 feet of frontage. It's not fair to the other property owners that would maybe have more. Going back to the example earlier, I will have to find out a way to equitably assess the 3 properties on the south end of 25th Street for their fair share because they basically have no frontage. So you have to be able to adapt to a methodology that's fair to the properties adjoining and take into account all of those factors.
That's a good answer. Thank you.
Shane, I do have one question. Is this paved now?
It is paved.
So we're talking about
good question. So this is paved from this yellow line to Highway 20, and the rest is not. And we're only assessing or only working on the portion that is not paved.
Okay, so once we pave it, and 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is down the road, it needs repair, is that then our responsibility as a city to do that, or is that the landowners?
It's the cities.
So when we make these, it's not simply, gee, they're paying, it's no money out of our pocket. It is a future liability to us as we approve these, just.
Correct.
Right. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, we're kind of running out of time. But,
If you want, we can table the next one, or I can bring it back on the agenda, future agenda, however you choose. I mean, I just need some direction at some point on these projects.
Right. Well, I think we'll see how it goes here. We might end up tabling this. The item number 8 isn't going to take but a moment. So I'll go ahead and if we can talk about the discussion of Kemp Avenue one-way conversion in just a few minutes, then we'll do that. But if anyone feels the necessity to table it, please do so. So go ahead and give a brief synopsis of this.
Okay. Well, quick history. Last year, when we considered the conversion of South First Avenue to one-way from two-way, or from one-way to two-way, excuse me. The direction to staff then was, let's do First Avenue and see how it goes, and then we'll revisit Kemp. So I'm at the point where I need to consider revisiting Kemp. And part of the reason for that is the way we would propose to do this project would be that we would seal coat and crack seal these blocks before we did the conversion, because it helps us erase the current striping lines, and we can reconfigure the parking and all of that stuff in conjunction with current budget projects. You know, if we use the seal coat project over this year, we just don't seal coat somewhere else, or vice versa. If we choose not to do this project this year, we'll use the seal coat money somewhere else. What research we've done is we have budgets for the seal coating. We have budgets for repainting lines. Rob has been doing research on the cost of the signage swap. We've also gotten a cost estimate for the changing or improving the stoplight interchange with Highway 81, and that cost estimate is essentially $22,000 at this point, and we would of course have to bid out a project to make that so. Then just the other highlights here, all of the stoplights along Kemp would probably be proposed to be changed into stop signs, and so we would have a four-way stop basically at First Street West, Broadway, Maple, and on 2nd Street. Then everything else would be stop signs as they are today. That's a brief, very brief discussion on how and why I'm talking about it is because it impacts other projects that I need to move forward with. The complicated question is that when they did the poll or survey, however they did that, the chamber did that for the city, and it was a very close race, if I remember right. It was like 52 to 48%, and I think the 52% was pro going conversion to two-way traffic. But with it being that marginal,
What was the date of that?
I reached out to the chamber to try to get some solid answers today, and I didn't receive those in time to bring them to this meeting. But I believe we talked about that about this time last year was when we made those decisions, and I don't remember what Megan Olson had, but
it was early it was early summer, spring, sometime, but it was within the past year.
Yeah, I think it was February, March type time frame in 17. But
Okay, in the essence of time, since I do have to do that item number 8, I don't want to force anybody to make any choices on this if they're not ready to do so. This is something of concern to our community. It's been requested with the H2020 group. We've been talking about this for years, so I know there's a lot of controversy around it. I personally believe that it's the right thing to do for our downtown to convert Kemp to two-way, back to two-way. It was constructed as a two-way street, and it can function. I believe it can function as a two-way street. But if anybody's uncomfortable with that, I'm very sensitive to that. I don't want to give the impression that we're rushing this through. So is anybody ready to entertain a motion? Because if we're not, let's just table it.
Yeah. Mayor, I'd just like to say that one of the discussions was that I think they went out and kind of checked with the building owners, and I think when we had the meeting, there was concern on the people that were actually running the business that they didn't have a say. They might be renting, so they thought that it should include both. Not sure that's correct or not, but as far as whether it should or not. And then the other thing was I thought that it was agreed upon that we would be bringing back some higher level of engineering detail because there was a body of people that says we're going to lose a lot of parking, and we had to validate that. And then there was also a body of people that said it's not wide enough, and we were going to evaluate the actual dimensions, because I think it changes as you go west or something, as you get farther to the west. And so that was good. I thought we were going to be bringing that information back to the council as part of our decision making.
Well,
so
we certainly can, and we might want to have a public hearing too.
right, correct. What I'm bringing this forward now is so we have all the conversations, make sure that this is what we want to do, but I need to do it in a time sensitive manner because I need to, in the next 2 months, I need to identify what where my chip seal project is going to be. Are we going to do a signal? We have a shorter period of time. If we drag this conversation into March, then I'd like to have the conversation sooner than later. Okay,
Mayor, can we table that till 2 weeks?
I'd entertain a motion to table
I'd make the motion to table till 2 weeks from yesterday.
Motion by Long, second by Danforth. Is there any further discussion?
The only thing I would say, Shane, do we have any feedback from First? Have we had any positive, negative feedback?
I have not received any complaints with the conversion, and I'll make this very brief. I believe that the street section on the critical portions of First very nearly mirrors, if not exactly, the portions of the street that'll be of concern on Kemp. And now I personally drive First Ave South every day, and I have very, very seldom seen any conflicts that I felt that people were unsafe or didn't drive adequately down that corridor. So,
Thank you.
There's no discussion allowed on a table, so
sorry, that was a
we
comment.
have a motion to. Sorry, that was me. All right, all those in favor of tabling this signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. This item is tabled. Okay, the last item on the agenda is approval of volunteers for the Ice Arena Committee, and I put this on the agenda. The volunteers listed are Vince Foley, Adam Sullivan, Will Morlock, Darren Holeen, Eric Scott, Marcy Cole, Terry Jorgensen, and Tom Lennox. Those are all private citizens who serve on the Ice Arena Committee. And if they are certified as volunteers by the council, then they would be covered by workman's comp insurance if something should happen to them while they are performing their duty as a committee member. And tomorrow, some of these folks are going down to Sioux Falls to consult with the city's architect, RS Architects, about the ice arena. So I wanted to get this done tonight so that it's official. So I'd like a motion to approve the list of volunteers for the Ice Arena Committee. Moved by Danforth, second by Y. Any discussion?
Who are the city staff that's
City staff
going?
is Colin Paulson, the Terry Kelly of the Park Department, and am I missing anybody? Oh, Spencer Tenick. Thank you, Spencer. I'm probably forgetting someone else. That's most of them anyway. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Is there any old business? Any new business? We do not have need for executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Danforth, second by Bueller. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We're adjourned. We'll take a very quick break and come back for